Today we are going to study about the menstrual cycle. This is a reproductive cycle that happens to take place in the primates, that is apes, monkeys and human beings. And this cycle is a reproductive cycle because it helps, or during this cycle there is formation of the ovum. Now let us come and understand the cycle. The cycle starts with day 1, and during this day 1 the menstruation takes place, or we call it as a menstrual phase. Now during this phase over here you can see the progesterone level is very low. So the red over here is the progesterone, or I'll write it with the black. We should use different colors. So red is the progesterone over here. Now what happens over here at the start, or the day 1, the menstruation starts and it lasts for about 5 days. So 1 to 5 days is known as the menstrual phase. This is the first phase, and during which the progesterone level is very low over here. So here the progesterone level is low. Now this low progesterone, which is being produced by the ovary, is low, and the endometrial lining over here of the uterus comes out in the form of menstrual flow. So the endometrium lining, that is the inside lining of the uterus, is shed during this particular period. And the progesterone level, since it is low, it will trigger the hypothalamus, or it will force the hypothalamus to act on the pituitary to secrete the FSH, or the follicle stimulating hormone. Now why it is happening? Because this follicle stimulating hormone is responsible for the development of the follicle. As a result, you can see over here, due to the low level of progesterone, the development of the follicle has not taken place. But as the FSH level, which is being produced by the pituitary, increases over here, the follicle starts developing, and this follicle starts developing into a mature follicle, that is the Graafian follicle. So under the influence of FSH, the follicles start developing. Now this phase, which is under the influence of the FSH and the follicle development, this phase is known as the follicular phase. We also call it as a proliferative phase, because here only the development of the follicle is taking place. So as a result, the follicle develops from primary follicle to tertiary follicle, and over here the complete Graafian follicle with the antrum cavity being shown over here develops. So here you can relate the FSH secretion where the mature follicle has formed under the influence of FSH. Now the increased concentration of the FSH again goes to the pituitary, the information feedback mechanism, and the secretion of FSH is reduced. It is reduced because already one mature ova is being produced under the influence of FSH, and there is no need for other kind of or other ova to get mature, because remember only one ova matures at one cycle. So the primary since this development has taken place, the FSH, that is the follicle stimulating hormone, will in the information will go to the pituitary, and as a result there is a reduction in the secretion of FSH, and the follicle stops. The development of the follicle does not take place further, but it triggers the production of LH, that is the luteinizing hormone. Now, this luteinizing hormone is responsible for the release of the ova from the Graafian follicle. Now, here you can see on day 14, the LH has increased considerably. The secretion of LH under the influence of the pituitary has increased, and this luteinizing hormone causes the ovulation to happen. So this increase is known as LH surge, and this causes ovulation. So this period over here is the ovulatory phase. This period over here is the ovulatory phase. Now this ovulation happens to take place at day 14. So LH causes ovulation. Now this ovulation, due to this, the ova is being released and the corpus luteum is being formed. Also, see over here, this is the endometrial lining of the uterus. Now over here, during day 1 to day 5, during which the menstrual phase lasts, during this period the endometrial lining is approximately very thin over here, but under the influence of the LH and as a subsequent increase in the production of estrogen, the endometrial lining thickens. It is approximately 2 to 3 millimeters thick over here. So during the follicular phase, along with the development of the follicle, the endometrial lining also thickens. Now, so over here till here it is the menstrual phase, then the follicular phase or the proliferative phase, and the ovulatory phase. Again, coming back, let us try and understand what has happened over here. During the menstrual cycle, that is the day 1, that is day when the cycle begins, or the period when the progesterone level is very low. Also you can see over here the follicle stimulating hormone and the LH secretion is also very low. The endometrial lining is very thin and it is shed off as menstrual flow along with the blood vessels. Now, as the level of progesterone is low, it stimulates the hypothalamus, which in turn stimulates the pituitary to produce the follicle stimulating hormone. As the follicle stimulating hormone is produced by the ovary, by the pituitary, the process of development of the follicle start, and there is change from the primary follicle to tertiary follicle and finally to the Graafian follicle. So here we have the Graafian follicle as a result or under the influence of FSH. Once the follicle reaches up to a mature state, that is the Graafian follicle, there is no need of FSH. So what is happening over here? The increased level of FSH is taken up as an inhibition, now the feedback mechanism, and as a result of which the FSH secretion is reduced over here. So the FSH secretion is reduced and the pituitary stops the secretion of FSH, which in turn triggers the production of luteinizing hormone. Now, when this luteinizing hormone is being produced, on day 14 nearly, there is a maximum production of luteinizing hormone, which is known as LH surge. And due to under the influence of this LH surge, the Graafian follicle, which has a mature ova, is released, and this process is known as ovulatory phase. So during the ovulatory phase, the follicle releases the mature ova and forms the corpus luteum. Now, this corpus luteum over here forces, or it produces the hormone which is known as progesterone. So over here, which is low, over the progesterone which is low during the menstrual cycle, gradually increases and reaches to peak at the formation of the corpus luteum. So corpus luteum produces the hormone which is known as the progesterone. So this LH surge causes the ovulation, and over here this period is known as the third stage, that is the ovulatory phase. So this is the ovulatory phase over here under the influence of luteinizing hormone. Once the ovulation is done, it forms corpus luteum. Now this corpus luteum produces progesterone. Now, under the influence of this progesterone hormone, the endometrial lining of the uterus further thickens and it reaches to a great thickness. Over here you can see the maximum increase in the, as it is corresponding to the level of the progesterone hormone. So this progesterone causes thickening of the endometrial lining of the uterus. Now this endometrial lining thickening is in anticipation of the pregnancy. So if the pregnancy happens, then progesterone levels will remain high, maintaining the pregnancy. But the estrogen level has come down, and also as soon as the ovulation has happened, the LH has also gone down. That is the luteinizing hormone. Since its role is over, it will also further, the concentration will go down. Now this condition, that is the increased concentration of the progesterone hormone, will continue if the pregnancy happens or the fertilization takes place. In absence, or if the fertilization does not happen, then the progesterone level go down, and as a result the endometrial lining which was being maintained by the progesterone gradually degenerates and we enter into the next cycle. So the cycle of this from one menstruation to another menstruation is known as the menstrual cycle. It lasts for around 28 to 29 days, but the days can vary. Also, the period of ovulation is approximately the 14th day or the mid-cycle day, during which due to the ovulation, that is the release of the ova from the ovary, the chances of fertilization are more over here, and also during this period the movement, that is the inside of the fallopian tube, is very well developed so as to push the ova through the fallopian tube. So here we see that there are different phases. This is the menstrual phase. The second phase is the follicular phase or the proliferative phase. The third is the ovulatory phase, and fourth is the luteal phase. This phase is fourth phase, that is the luteal phase. And during the luteal phase, the corpus luteum produces the progesterone, and this is the complete menstrual cycle, which is under the influence of major hormones, which are the two ovarian hormones are estrogen and progesterone, and the pituitary hormone is LH and FSH. Also, the corpus luteum produces the progesterone. So, under the influence of these four major hormones, the menstrual cycle is regulated.